Welcome to week 5. Renewing the mind. Well, I want to talk specifically about images and ideas and how they work together. We know that we can't live like Christ without thinking like Christ. We're told in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, starting at verse 9 through the end of the chapter, that we can acquire the mind of Christ. That actually the way it works is that only the Spirit of God knows the thoughts of God. Only followers of Jesus have the Spirit of God. Therefore, we are the ones then, are the only candidates to know the very thoughts of God. Therefore, we can have the mind of Christ. It says, "For the soulish man does not receive the gifts of the Spirit of God. They are foolishness to him. He cannot understand them because they are spiritually appraised, but he who is spiritual appraises all things." So that's why the Holy Spirit is such an important factor in the whole concept of transformation, because the spirit of the disciplines, the spirit of all of this is the Holy Spirit. Now, ideas begin early in life. We're taught our ideas from our family, from our playmates, from people around us. We get into school, we are told a number of things. We learn from history, we learn from geography, mathematics. Our minds are filled with ideas about life and the realities therein. And what images do is they empower those ideas. They give emotion to them. They give them kind of a oomph in our life. For example, Elvis Presley, who many of you may be too young to remember. You may have seen something on television about him or a film. But when I was a child, Elvis Presley became famous. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show. And when he came on this variety show on television, it was scandalous to some because, as I recall, they would not shoot him from the waist down because his hips moved in a suggestive, provocative way. And as I remember, that Elvis Presley was this symbol, this image that evoked rebellion among young people of sexuality, challenging the system, and so he became sort of an icon for all of that. Lance Armstrong, 7-time winner of the Tour de France, when you think of him, you think of discipline and courage and determination, and people wear the yellow wristband, which says live strong. It talks about the fight against cancer. So when we think about people and what they represent, these are the images that we come up with. These are the examples that we have, or the role models. Now, the good life is presented by the culture. And we talked about this in our last session, about job, spouse, community, home, automobile, wardrobe, vacation, your basic image. Images have great power in our lives. Many young women with eating disorders think they are fat, but they're actually thin. It's in the mind, not really in the mirror. The mind changes reality. There are certain people who have no real perspective on who they are. This is one of the wonderful things about the community of Christ, is that we gain our identity in the congregation, within the community of faith. But all you have to do is watch all the reality programs that are on television and available now, such as American Idol. There are thousands upon thousands of people in this country who think they're good singers. But it's been obvious to the entire audience, and certainly to the judges, that they are not able to sing in any way that other people would want to listen to. So an idea is set. The image is to present it, to empower, and finally the emotions confirm. And either we'll be elated by what people say about our image and how, if our reality matches the image, we're elated. If our reality doesn't match our image, then we feel smashed by it all. When I was a young man, I was taller than most of the other young men my age. And during my school days in elementary school, I was an underachiever in the classroom. I didn't have much confidence there. But I did have confidence as a basketball player. My grandfather built me this really cool basketball goal in my backyard. It was better than anybody else's in the neighborhood, and I played many hours down that basketball goal, and I became pretty good at it. And I went to the tryouts when I was in the 6th grade for the junior high basketball team, and it got down to 3 players, and they were only going to choose 2 players out of the 6th grade, and they chose 2 other players, not me. This was very disappointing because there was a young boy named Jimmy, and he had made the team, and I knew that I was a better player than Jimmy, but I didn't do well that day in the tryout, and so it just ate me alive to see Jimmy going off to practice one day with his red U.S. Keds slung over his shoulder, tied together at the laces. That really bothered me. And at that moment, I decided I would just practice that much harder. But the next year, I had some problems with underachieving when it all caught up with me because I was in the 7th grade. And during the middle of the year in the 7th grade, the teacher would tell us if we had been promoted to the second part of the 7th grade. And she read our names one after the other. And as the class member would hear their name, they would stand and go to the other side of the room. That meant they had passed into the next semester of the 7th grade. When she had finished reading all the names, there was just me and one other fellow left on the wrong side of the room. Everybody else was passed on. We were stuck, me and Kenny. So Billy and Kenny flunked that semester of the 7th grade. And it was then when I remember I was one day in English class, they were diagramming sentences. And I was okay with the subject and the predicate and maybe the direct object. But when they got off to all those little squiggly lines that went off the main line that looked like off-ramps on a toll road, that's when I got confused. And I remember kind of giving up on English and giving up on science and giving up on math. And so I was not even eligible to play basketball in the 7th grade. Because of my failing the 7th grade, I was not able to play. Even though I was one of the better players and I proved it every day on the playground, I was not able to play. And people around the school would just come up to me, and you know how people that age can be, and go, duh. They call me Bill Duh Hall because I was dumb. And so I was then promoted to the high school after an extra semester. They asked me if I wanted to go to high school for 3.5 years or 4.5 years. I chose the 4.5. That was a good decision on my part. In fact, it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. But it didn't change my grades that much. My freshman year in high school, I was still ineligible for basketball. And I knew I was as good, if not better, than the players on the freshman team, but I was not eligible to play academically. And so finally they put me in a remedial class in English and in mathematics. And finally I started to get and learn the basics. And I did graduate from high school. I did get to play basketball. And in playing basketball, I excelled, and I was confident in that area of my life. But I was not confident at all in the classroom. But I did get a college scholarship to play basketball. And I went to Oklahoma to a small community college where they said you can spend 1 year there and you can get your grades up. And so I went to that college, and I liked it so much I stayed 2 years. And then the following year, I attended a Christian university where I was, again, on a basketball scholarship.